I started a garbage company about 3 years ago because I saw a huge opportunity in our market. A big company was dropping the ball in a huge way, leaving the door open for a guy like me. I like setups like this. I like to be the aggressor. I like to come in and ruin the party. It's a lot of fun for me. It's exciting to start building revenue and watch a strategy work. From the week we started, we've consistently signed up 20 to 25 new customers every week, and our momentum only grows. About a year and a half after I started though, another company started up in my area. They priced their service several dollars lower than mine, and they were advertising heavily on Facebook. I recently did a video called Fighting Off My Competitors, and I talked about a similar situation where a company came in and they cut prices a bunch and they were going door to door selling their product. This is not that story. This is a completely different company, and this is a completely different dynamic because this was a locally owned company. It's a different thing to fight a big company than to fight a locally owned company. For me, playing the locally owned card is important. So when another locally owned company comes into the area and they're several dollars cheaper than me, it kind of scares me a little bit. I started seeing this new company's cans popping up around the area, and I could see that they had gained some traction. They hadn't taken any customers from me, but because they were cheaper, they were getting some of the customers that I would have gotten. The dynamic was that this big company was dropping the ball, and as people got fed up and switched, they would call me. Well, if there's somebody else that's locally owned and they're cheaper, then they might call them instead. So I was getting less new customers. It didn't show up in our numbers, and everything still looked really good from a growth point, but I didn't like it that I could see that they were growing as well. This was a problem. My staff was getting a little uneasy and wanted to know what I was gonna do. I always assured them that everything was gonna be okay and that nobody could offer cheap service for very long. At the end of the day, good service isn't cheap, and cheap service isn't good. I do have to admit though, it's very frustrating when you have somebody in the market that's pricing things below cost. In the service business, the worst kind of competitor you can have is one that doesn't know how to add. There's a difference between pricing your service cheap to try to gain some market share and then raising prices, and somebody that just doesn't know what it costs to operate. People in general think revenue cures all, but if you're losing money on a few and you turn that into many, you're just gonna be losing more money, unless it's the type of business where you have to gain enough density to actually make it work. The garbage business is actually like that, but in this particular case, even if this company had gained density, they still weren't gonna make any money. The company's price would just never work. At the end of the day, we all burn the same diesel, we all have to pay a similar amount for labor and insurance, and it's just a matter of how efficient an operation you can run. The concern in this case was that they gain a bunch of market share though and then raise prices. If they raise prices to match my price, then they don't lose that many customers, because when customers get mad about it and they call around, they're just finding a similar price. One day I was filling in at work and I was driving the recycling truck. I stopped in at a gas station to get some water, and I saw that they were there fueling their truck up. So I stopped and introduced myself. We had a very friendly conversation, and my impression was that this was a really nice guy who had just never owned a business before. I cautioned him that his prices were too low, and not only could he just not sustain what he was doing, but he wasn't going to be able to grow his business. One trap that people fall victim to is becoming a victim of your own success. This is when you're growing so fast because you offer a very appealing product or service, but the growth is too expensive and you can't level off because everybody wants your product or service. And what happens is you run out of money and then you have to go out of business, or you have to get an investor, something like that. But it happens all the time. You have to price things that are realistic so that you can pay for your growth, or at least have a plan to pay for your growth. A few months later, this person called me. He said that he was having trouble sleeping at night and he worried about money constantly. There was never enough money to pay for things like cans as they were trying to grow, and when the truck broke down, they didn't have the money to repair it, and they needed a backup truck, but they didn't have the funds or the credit to go buy one. He offered to sell me the business, and he just wanted to get out, and the number that he threw out was $200,000. At the time, I had about 3,000 customers and they had about 550 customers. They were running 5 days a week and then doing maintenance and delivering cans on the weekends. The transaction would include the cans and the truck and everything they had. All the customers. One of the problems was, though, they serviced all their areas on different days than I serviced those areas on. On top of that, they were several dollars cheaper than me. Also, and this is something that happens a lot, they had picked up a lot of the customers that were hard to deal with. These are the people that don't pay their bills, so you're constantly trying to collect from them. When a new business comes into an area, a lot of times the first ones to go to them are the hardest customers to manage. So I was going to have to send out a letter the day I bought this to all these customers saying, not only am I changing your pickup day, but I'm also raising your rates $4 or $5 a month. So I respectfully declined. It was just too much for me to sort out. A few months later, the guy calls me back, and I can tell this time he's desperate. He just wants to get out, and he offered to sell me the business for $70,000. Now, in today's market, it's hard to find equipment. It's hard to do anything. I mean, the supply chain is so messed up that just getting a truck, if you're growing or whatever, is near impossible. And when I talk to my truck provider, he's like, there's like a year wait list just to order a new truck. So the idea of buying this company and having this truck come with it is pretty appealing to me, because now I have a backup truck. I figure the truck is worth anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000. So if I buy the whole company for $70,000, I'm getting the 550 customers for about $40,000. So I start to think this looks pretty good. So I tell the guy, okay, let's get into the numbers. Send me the route sheets and anything you have so I can really dive into this and just see how it's going to fit into my business. But after looking at the route sheets, I found some real problems. On top of, they picked up all their stops on different days than I picked up the stops. And on top of having to do a $4 or $5 per stop increase in price, about a third of the customers were out of my service area. And on top of that, they had lost probably about 100 customers since I had looked at it last. So when I looked at it, they were down 100 customers from where I had seen it last. And then a third of those customers were out of my service area. So I was gonna end up with 300-ish customers that I was gonna have to send a letter to saying I'm changing your price quite a bit, and I'm changing the day I'm going to come by and pick up your trash. And again, it just became unappealing, and I decided to decline. When you buy a business to add it on to your current business, it needs to fit into what you're doing as a value add. It needs to be something that once you bolt it onto your business, it's going to give you a leg up. Deals like this, I'm going to have to fix all the problems that were causing this company not to work in the first place. So all I'm doing is buying a bunch of problems. In these particular cases, I would rather just try to take the business from them. And that's what's happening. Another company bought this company, and since they bought it, we've been getting calls and picking up customers on those routes. I would much rather have this type of situation, because the customer's coming to me with the expectation that I'm setting. When you buy a business, you're the new guy. And if they wanted to do business with the new guy, they would have called you in the first place. So you're changing a lot of things from the guy they like. But if a customer calls you to sign up for your service, you're not the new guy, you're setting the expectations right off. So this new company, they change the price and they change the pickup day, and customers are getting frustrated, and they call me and I'm offering the same price or pretty close to the same price, and they're not frustrated. And it's because they came to me with fresh new expectations and fresh new terms. I'm not changing what they're used to. This is how we do things. You're changing what you're used to. So it's important when you're going to buy a business to understand that it needs to fit into what you're doing very well. And if it doesn't, it's going to be a problem. Guys, I make these videos to hopefully inspire people to make an investment or start a business. And if you already have a business, I want to try to help you make it better. I recently did a video on my propane business and just what's going on with that. And if you're interested in seeing that, I'm going to put it up right here. And if not, I'll see you soon in the next video.